Chapter 2. History's What You Make It. To Fitz's half relief, half disappointment, the girl didn't whisk him off in a TARDIS-type timeship. She led him down a couple of sandy streets, and then fiddled with something at her belt, and a shimmering wall appeared in front of them. "Come on," she said. "You just walk through. You must have done it before. There was a report of a temporary barrier breach. I suppose that's when you got out of your zone." She stepped through the barrier and Fitz followed. "Oh," he said, looking at the cobbled streets in front of him. "This sort of 20th century. Right. It's not real, is it?" "This is where you come from," the girl said. "Let me check your serial number. I know you're not one of mine." No, Fitz said hurriedly. "This is where I come from. No checking required. 20th century is me, definitely." "You must be a pleb then," the girl continued. "Not one of the important characters. I mean, I don't recognize you." The enormity of this insult took Fitz aback for a moment. He, the legendary Fitz Fortune, star of the 60s, or at least he would have been if he hadn't been unexpectedly forced to go on the run through being wanted for murder and then taken away in a space-time machine, accused of being a pleb? Worse still, just a pleb. On a nearby wall there was a poster of Elvis Presley, the King. King of Fitz's heart when he was on stage, anyway. He could have been as big as Elvis. He had said that to his one-time fellow companion Sam once, and she had made some joke about hamburgers that he hadn't got, so she had taken him to the TARDIS's film library and shown him. But he preferred not to think about that. Heroes should always remain heroic, in his eyes. But anyway, if they wanted 20th century important characters, he'd give them one. He gave the girl a scornful look. "You think I'm just a pleb? You haven't done your research, darling. I'm Fitz Fortune, of course. Just as big as that guy," he gestured at Elvis, "back in the old 20th century. The printing department must be a bit behind. I expect there'll be posters of me up there any day now." "Fitz Fortune? The one and only, baby." He gave her a few bars of groovy weekend on air guitar to prove it. She seemed stunned with admiration. Then he realized she was staring over his shoulder at a middle-aged woman in the distance who was inspecting what appeared to be a miniature rocket ship. "There's the curator," she said. "Got a dash. Not supposed to be able to cross zones. Don't want any questions. She'll stick you back in your right place. Fitz Fortune." And then, with a shimmer of whatever, she was gone through the barrier again, back with the mummies and the pyramids. And the barrier vanished, but Fitz tried to follow her anyway. He just ended up on his bum again. So, you needed a sonic screwdriver or whatever that girl had been carrying on her belt to get through. Which meant that Fitz was stuck in the 20th century, what did she say, zone? 20th century zone. So that would have been the Egyptian zone, and the prehistoric zone? Some kind of futuristic museum. No dusty cases required. No signs saying "do not touch." There was a sign, though, a big standing sign that read, "Welcome to London, City of Swings." So, this was how the people of the future viewed his time, his place then. He looked around him. On the street corner in front of him was a Coca-Cola vending machine. Oh well, at least he wouldn't dehydrate to death. And you had to admire an advertising campaign that could ensure the product was remembered however far into the future this was. And there were a number of the little rocket ship things dotted about. Maybe he could escape in one of those and hope there wasn't a barrier across the sky. He started walking down the street, ducking down behind a strangely pink pillar box as a giant furry creature wandered past. And what the hell was all that about? What was it? Some sort of abominable snowman? What had that got to do with 20th century London? Turned the corner and... Yee-haw! There was the TARDIS. The doc must have got back to it and managed to do a short hop to pick Fitz up. Brief dark thoughts about the risk the doctor had taken seeing that he didn't seem to know quite what was going on with the TARDIS at the moment. What if it hadn't worked, and Fitz had been abandoned here forever? Mind you, knowing the Doctor, he might have been flying around the universe for hundreds of years trying to get back to Fitz. He might have lost that stuck-up Anji girl and got a host of new, attractive female companions, all dying to meet the legendary Fitz that the Doctor was always talking about. He might have... Oh, heck, let's just find out. Fitz jogged over to the TARDIS. He waved up at the light wherein the scanner eye was located in a, "Hey, it's me, Fitz, let me in," kind of way. The TARDIS doors failed to open. Fitz gave them a shove, just in case, and stumbled forward into a 4-foot square wooden box. Sod it! He slammed the door shut and banged on it with his fist, frustrated. Might have known it was too good to be true. No easy way out for Fitz. Only half an hour back with the Doctor, and he was right in the thick of things already. "Stop it at once! You're damaging the exhibit!" He spun round. The woman who had given the Nefertiti girl a shock had managed to sneak right up behind Fitz without him noticing, which just showed how distracted he must have been, because they were still on a cobbled street and she was wearing stiletto heels. Sod it times 2. "Who exactly are you?" Well, it had worked once, it might work again. Fitzfortune, baby. Obviously, you know, groovy weekend. Da-da-da-da-da-da-dum. You broke my heart, bikini girl. "No, I don't know." Scraped back grey hair and a snotty manner, this woman reminded Fitz of his old maths teacher, one of the ones who used to say things like, "That may be how you used to do things in Germany," really sarcastically, knowing Fitz had never been further than the other end of Southend Pier in his life. "What I do know is you're not designated for this section, and judging by your clothing, I sincerely hope you're not intended for another zone. Whatever were the designers thinking of?" She took Fitz's lapel in one hand and sniffed in disapproval. "I don't even think a primitive 20th centurion would have worn a coat like this." Fitz had spent a long time choosing this coat in London in AD 2001 while waiting to meet up with the Doctor, and was firmly of the opinion that it was A, the height of style, B, tip-top quality, and C, really him. But he supposed that, technically, it was a 21st century coat, so he decided not to mention it. But then the woman sniffed at him again, even more loudly, so he decided to mention it after all. But she didn't seem impressed. "You've been reprogrammed by one of those little horrors, haven't you?" she said. "Trying to ruin my sectors with babbling idiots. They just do it to get on my nerves. Jealousy, I suppose." She took a large, very, very large, and very, very pointy screwdriver from a pocket of her jumpsuit. "Just hold still, and let me get to your brain." Fitz made an eep sound and ran. Behind him, fading fast, he heard the woman give an exasperated sigh. Then there were some beeps. Then a bloody great gold-coloured metallic monster, about 20 foot high, all right, 6 3/4, which was still a fair bit taller than Fitz, stepped out in front of him and grabbed Fitz's shoulder in a glittering fist as he tried to alter his course at the last second to avoid the horrific thing. Fitz struggled, alarmed, trying to break its grip without breaking any of his own bones. The woman was approaching, heels clicking on the stony street, and she was pointing that ruddy, huge screwdriver at him, scary end first. "So why are they executing you?" Anji asked. "You look rather young to be terrorists." Not true, of course, but it seemed too rude to use the first word that had come into her head, which was ineffectual. Or the second, which was soft. "We have a just cause," said Beezy angrily. "Anyway, we're not that much younger than you." "But as I'm not a terrorist," Anji pointed out, "that's not really relevant." "We're not really terrorists," said Zernick, looking a bit sheepish about it. We've not actually done anything, but one of our supporters sent us this stuff, and it seemed a shame not to use it. Jonathan said, "Zequathon," hissed the blonde guy. Zequathon said, "Sorry," and so he broke into the centre and... "What stuff?" asked the doctor. "Sorry? What stuff did this supporter send you?" Zernick beamed. "Oh, brilliant things. Really, really brilliant. Devices that let you get through the energy barriers, and this fantastic zappy thing that can disable the androids. Top technology." "Fascinating," said the doctor. "I'd have liked to have seen them." Zernick reached into a pocket. "There you go." He passed a couple of small silvery boxes to the doctor, earning himself a hard stare from his comrades, who obviously hadn't completely fallen for the doctor's "trust me" act yet. "The guards didn't confiscate these? That's surprising." The doctor began closely examining the boxes. "They didn't even search us," said Zernick, shrugging. "Us just being there was enough for them." The doctor looked up. "Why? Trespassers will be prosecuted. That's something you hear all the time, but executed? That's fairly unusual on civilized worlds." Zernick shrugged again, and didn't meet the doctor's gaze. Zernick reached into a pocket. "There you go." He passed a couple of small silvery boxes to the doctor, earning himself a hard stare from his comrades, who obviously hadn't completely fallen for the doctor's "trust me" act yet. "The guards didn't confiscate these? That's surprising." The doctor began closely examining the boxes. "They didn't even search us," said Zernick, shrugging. "Us just being there was enough for them." The doctor looked up. "Why? Trespassers will be prosecuted. That's something you hear all the time, but executed? That's fairly unusual on civilized worlds." Zernick shrugged again, and didn't meet the doctor's gaze. The doctor turned round and looked inquisitively at the other two. Beezy sneered silently, but Zequathon was no match for the doctor's stare. "Well," he said defiantly, "it was 'cause of all the murders, weren't it?" Fitz was babbling at the top of his voice. "I'm human, really I am. Please don't take my brain apart. Ow, that hurts. No, I didn't get here by myself. A girl brought me. I don't know, just some kid. No, that doesn't prove anything. I don't know who these little horrors are, but I'm nothing to do with them. I'm human, I tell you. What authorized guest list? What penalty for trespass? No! For Christ's sake, I'm a real live human being from the real live 20th century, and I'm here by accident, and I can prove it. Ask me anything about the 20th century, anything at all. Well, as long as it's pre-1963. Actually, things after, say, 1955 would be best too." "Very well," the woman said, which took Fitz aback a bit. He took a deep breath, psyching himself up as she continued. "We'll see how good your programming is. In which year did Earth astronauts first land on Mars?" Fitz raised a sardonic eyebrow. "Far too easy," he smirked. "Trick question. Never happened in the 20th century." The woman gave him an even bigger smirk. "Incorrect. As early as the 1960s, Earthmen were working, resting, and playing on Mars." Fitz began to splutter his objections, but she continued. "Question 2. Which English politician was well known for his seaside boxing matches?" "You're a loony," said Fitz. "Incorrect," the woman told him. "The answer is Winston Churchill." Question 3. Who murdered Roger "Shut up," said Fitz. "You just don't know what you're talking about. I don't know if you're really thick or trying to catch me out or something, but you're talking serious bollocks. Winston Churchill was the British Prime Minister during most of the war, and when he said, 'We shall fight them on the beaches,' he was talking about how if the Nazis invaded, we'd never surrender, not running on about a scrap over the buckets and spades. I lived through that, you know, and it wasn't very nice. That was the Second World War, 1939 to 1945. The First World War, also known as the Great War, meaning it was very big, not that it was really good, had been fought 1914 to 1918, and it was supposed to be the war to end all wars, only it wasn't. That man," he pointed at another of the many Elvis posters, "had blue suede shoes, not green rubber wellies, or whatever stupid thing you've got him down for, and he was a singer, a fantastic one, not a teddy bear, or a hotel keeper, or a hound dog. And I don't know who killed Roger Ackroyd, see? I knew what you were going to say, because it wasn't real. It was a book, and I've never read it. I do know who did the murder on the Orient Express, though, and I can tell you about Middle-earth, and the Day of the Triffids, and James Bond. Only none of them were real either. And I don't know what weird version of 20th century England you're talking about, but I reckon it's some stupid fake you've come up with after getting a few details off the back of cigarette cards and chocolate bar wrappers and scraps from local library and then filling in the gaps to suit yourself. He paused for a long, deep breath and couldn't quite bring himself to start up again. The woman was frowning. "Come with me," she said. "We're going to go through this zone together, you and I, and you are going to tell me about everything we see." "So, you're not going to unscrew my head?" asked Fitz. "Not yet," she said, as he knew from so many movies that she would. To cybertron@xprof.net, from Anji at mwfutures.co.uk. Date 14/2/01, 13:05. Subject: fun. Hey babes, you'll never guess what. Not only are there A, dinosaurs, and B, terrorists on this planet, there are also C, lots of unexplained deaths. Exciting, huh? Oh well, at least there aren't rats in the cells. At least, not yet. Love, Anji, XXX. P.S. I miss you. Send now/send later. Send later. The doctor was talking. He had a lovely voice, soft and smooth, and just deep enough, with that hint of accent that made you think of humour and secret smiles. A stick on a talking book in the car and fall asleep at the wheel kind of voice. Dreamy, even. Funny, she could acknowledge how sexy his voice was, how sexy he was, full stop, without actually fancying him herself in the slightest. Just like she could, say, look at photos of Marilyn Monroe or Michelle Pfeiffer and know they were utterly gorgeous, but not be at all that way inclined herself. Not her type, that was it. But what was her type? Oh yes, dead. That's what he was. Focus on the now. Lots of other people were dead too, it seemed. So, how many visitors have died? The doctor had asked the boys. "Dunno," said Zernick. "They just said that people had been found dead in the centre, killed. Wouldn't tell us any more." "Because they thought we knew," added Zequithon. "Because they thought it was us what did it, so they didn't bother to give us the details." Zernick looked thoughtful. "Can't have been that many people, though. The centre's not open yet. Grand ceremony thing's not happened. The only people who go in there are the staff and advanced guest types." The doctor had jumped to his feet and was pacing up and down the cell. He reminded Anji of a caged tiger. Barely suppressed energy, could strike at any moment if they didn't let him out. But there was that hypnotic quality too, that tigers had. You couldn't keep your eyes off him, had to see what he was going to do next. Hypnotic power. She suddenly had a vision of the doctor leaning towards her singing, "Trust in me, just in me," which was the legacy of a Disney film that she'd both loved and hated as a child. Good film, bad for all the jungle jokes it had inspired in the classroom afterwards, because, of course, there were lots of jungles in Yorkshire where she was born. Oh, yes. And thinking of the Jungle Book and Shere Khan the tiger, who had been the bad guy, made her realise that the doctor wasn't a tiger at all, because she couldn't imagine him ever being so sneaky. He had to be the good guy, so the nice cat, the Black Panther, Bagheera, with maybe a bit of Baloo, the jolly but incompetent bear, thrown in. When Anji had been taken to see the Jungle Book at age 6, she had been disappointed by the ending. The boy had had the chance to live a life of adventure with all his friends, and had given it up to settle down with some girl. She hadn't been able to understand that. Now she thought she understood it a lot more. But here she was, stuck in the jungle, with Doctor, the panther bear, and Fitz, who was probably the orangutan, and she couldn't get back to the little human village even if she wanted to. She reluctantly dragged her mind back from this nonsense to the here and now. What it seemed to come down to was this. This theme park, Earthworld, was made up of various zones based on periods in Earth's history, or prehistory in the case of the area where the TARDIS had landed. Earth's history was a very specialist field, as not that many records survived. The boys didn't go into detail why, and Anji didn't ask. The last thing she wanted to hear about was that her world had been devastated by nuclear war or something. The centre was to be populated by androids, built to look like inhabitants of the relevant time and place, and programmed to interact with the visitors as if they were all living in Earth's history together. Visitors could dress up in costume and immerse themselves in Earth life, forgetting their drab little existences on New Jupiter. The grand opening ceremony was due to happen this very week, but a few privileged visitors had been allowed in for sneak previews. And some of them hadn't come out again. There were bodies. Mauled, some of them, apparently. Anji was almost grateful that they'd been arrested. It had got them out of the way, if nothing else. And even if we could convince them that we weren't responsible for the deaths, Zequithon said, they wouldn't let us go, because Uva's not going to want it spread around that visitors to Earthworld are likely to end up sliced and diced, is he? If the public don't go, and the off-world tourists don't arrive, he's screwed. We're talking revolution, drawled Beezy, or Hoover will be forced to abdicate at least. Which would be nice, added Zernik. His popularity's soaring since this stupid theme park came along, said Zequithon. They've run competitions and stuff for people to be allowed in before the official opening. It's all anyone's talking about. Can you imagine the reaction if they found out what's going on? So, President Hoover is going to cover up the deaths, said the doctor, still pacing. Then he suddenly stopped stock still, shouted, "That's terrible!" and sat down. So, you going to sort it out, Doctor? Asked Anji. I certainly am, he said. This is hugely irresponsible. And what do you think's going on? The doctor didn't answer her directly. He turned to the three boys. Your android technology, how advanced is it? The boys exchanged, "You what?" glances. Pretty standard, said Beezy. But what's that? We've travelled through time and space to get here. We don't know what your standard is. Anji saw their expressions and preempted what she assumed was coming next. He's telling the truth, she said. Just take it as read. It'll make things much easier in the long run. The doctor carried on anyway. When we landed in the theme park, we saw a caveman and a pterosaur, and there were some dinosaurs about too. Were they mechanical? Spec so, Zernik said, nodding. And were they indicative of the general level of historical understanding? Anji asked. But the doctor frowned at her. He went on. And you say that in general these androids can interact with people. So, assuming we'd landed in some non-prehistoric area, would we be able to tell if we were talking to a human being or an android? No, not really. I spy potential trouble, said Anji. I've seen Blade Runner. Well, most of it. So, that's pretty advanced technology. And the more advanced it is, the more likelihood of something going hideously wrong. Anji frowned. How do you mean, Doctor? You've seen Blade Runner? Well, most of it. You tell me. She thought for a second. Rogue androids, wanting their own identity, and killing humans? Well, 1 and 3 at least, I'd say. It could just be a mistake in the programming, rather than a development of consciousness. But yes, I would think that there's an android revolution going on, the doctor said, jumping to his feet again, and it's up to us to stop it. The three boys cheered. Anji just sighed. Well, for a start, the whole of the 20th century didn't happen at once, you know. If you're going to have gas lamps and stuff like that, you don't have astronauts. Oh, and those flapper types and the guys with the twirly moustaches? They can talk, you know. they don't just have to mouth help or do sinister silent laughs. And all those vampires wandering about, afraid not. Well, not during the day anyway. And I can't even begin to think what those trundly upright tanks with the radar things on top are, but they were certainly never in the London I knew. The woman, then a Earthworld she'd said, though Fitz still kept thinking of her as Mrs. Taylor Maths, had kept silent through Fitz's rant. Now she finally spoke. All of these things came from genuine 20th century records. Written matter, filmic matter. Those upright tanks, for example, are called war machines. They worked for the General Post Office in the 20th century, which was an ancient order for the delivery of communications. We have actual filmed records of them on the streets of London, presumably delivering letters. Oh, right, said Fitz. And I suppose they had those great thumping arm things to protect their non-existent ankles from small, fierce dogs. Earthworld was silent again for several moments. She looked almost distraught. If she hadn't been such a sarky cow, Fitz might have even felt sorry for her. These things, painstakingly researched, faithfully reproduced on thousands of Earthworlds all over the galaxy. You're saying that all of it, is wrong? Yes. Take anyone from 20th century London and plop them down here and they'll just laugh at you. As I've just proved, actually. Fitz laughed, to show her he meant it. You're lucky I'm here, really. Genuine 20th century consultant. Thousands of theme parks at 50 quid a time. No, hang on. Don't want to price myself out of the market. Earthworld looked at him pityingly. You've just convinced me you're telling the truth. Come with me. She turned on her heel and went in the opposite direction, Fitz having to jog a few steps to catch up with her. As it seemed to have done the trick so far, he kept up the running commentary. No talking horses, no dancing bears, and that girl's far too young to be dressed like, hey! For he recognised her. Early teens, blonde, bobbed hair, and big blue eyes, a bit like the Doctor's, said the bit of Fitz that was forever consumed with the Time Lord. And then he mentally kicked himself for not even being able to look at a babe without thinking of the Doctor, and then mentally kicked himself extra hard for thinking of an adolescent as a babe. It was the Nefertiti girl, but now dressed in a flapper outfit of fringed dress, high heels, and beads long enough to lasso with. He tried doing a really small wave so Venna Earthworld wouldn't notice. She didn't, but neither did the girl. So, was she an android? She hadn't acted like one. But then he, Fitz, didn't act like an android as far as he was aware, and it hadn't stopped Earthworld and her screwdriver. The androids here were obviously pretty good. Maybe this wasn't the girl he'd met before, but they'd just used the same mould, or whatever, to make her. He thought he'd test the water. That flapper kid, he said. She looks a bit familiar. Have you only got, a few models? Earthworld sniffed. The infinite variety of the human form is represented in Earthworld. We have androids of all shapes, sizes, and colours, and no two are the same. Oh, said Fitz. It must be the same girl after all, doubling as a quick change artist. Except for that design, the woman continued. Aha! The president of New Jupiter's Daughters, she sniffed again, insisted on making a number of the androids in their own image. The girls are confined to the palace and unable to visit the centre, although they were responsible for a lot of the technical groundwork, so this was understood to be an acceptable compromise. I see, said Fitz, who didn't really. A few hours later, he would be really, really wishing he had taken the opportunity to ask a few more questions. Are we all clear on the plan? First we escape, then I go and find these princess triplets who built the androids. The president's daughters are princesses, Anji muttered. There's democracy for you. And work out how to stop the robot revolt, while you four infiltrate the theme park using those handy devices your supporter so thoughtfully sent you, and rescue poor Fitz from the killer androids. Once the park is safe again, there'll be no need for the president to execute you, so I'll just give him a quick talk about the importance of maintaining one's own identity, and then we can all meet up back here in the palace for free pardons and tea. All right with everyone? The Anji boys were staring at the Doctor as if Superman himself had come among them. The cynical teen act had fled completely. Hero worship was here. Yes, they breathed, awestruck. Oh yes, Anji agreed. Fine by me. Just one thing. How do we escape? The doctor's face fell as though she'd snatched his sweeties away. I'm not sure. Then as quick as a flash she was beaming again. But I know I'm really good at this bit usually, he said. Let's look for secret passages. He began to tap the walls hopefully. The Anji boys joined in. After a moment, so did Anji, shaking her head resignedly. They were at Venner Durwell's office. Fitz knew that because the door had a big sign saying, Venner Durwell, Curator, Private, on it. They'd gone through one of those energy barriers again to get here. Durwell had used a zappy gadget like the one the Nefertiti girl had had. The office was in the control centre, a sort of reception-cum-control room-cum-gift shop, with nice carpets and a lot of switchboard sort of things. No people there. Inside the office, Durwell shut the door. So, she said, does anyone know you're here in Earthworld? That sounded to Fitz like a particularly dodgy leading question, the sort villains always ask to see if it's safe to bump you off. He backed off a few steps. Yes, he said, lots of people. Which means no. Good. Fitz backed up a bit more and fell back over Durwell's desk. Don't kill me, he squeaked. She snorted. Of course I'm not going to kill you. Don't be ridiculous. He breathed a sigh of relief and sat up. You're going to give me every scrap of information you know about the 20th century. And when I'm acknowledged as the greatest academician of our day and can say goodbye to poxy Earth heritage and its 2-bit research grants for good, then I'll kill you, so no one will know I didn't discover it all for myself. Fitz lay back on the desk again. He didn't remember signing a contract when he started travelling with the Doctor, but he reckoned he must have done, and that one of those clauses he'd failed to read was, "We'll get captured by Mad Bint every 3 months." The Doctor thumped the wall. I hate being locked up. Anji looked at his face and saw a flash of an expression that could have been despair. It shocked her. Perhaps she had imagined it. It's an electronic lock, she said. Couldn't you fix it with your sonic screwdriver? His eyes gleamed. The sonic screwdriver, of course! He produced it from a pocket. Anji decided it looked a bit like one of those torches doctors use to see inside your ears. But the Doctor just stared at it. Then he turned to Anji and looked at her reproachfully, as if it were her fault. Now I don't know what to do. I have to not think about things. It's like... He seemed to struggle for an analogy that might mean something to her. It's like when you go in the wardrobe looking for the strange land. You never find it. But if you just happen upon it, you find yourself in the middle of wondrous adventures. Wondrous adventures. Oh, yes. She took the screwdriver from him. I think what you actually mean is, don't worry about things and they'll just pop into your mind. Let your subconscious do the work. Oh, yes, he said, a bit disappointedly. That's better. Not as picturesque, though. A picture paints 1,000 words, you know. I once knew a man who slightly misinterpreted that. He just sat and painted 1,000 words, used the dictionary as his inspiration. He started at A, singular, indefinite article, and it took him all the way to albumen, the white of an egg. Each word was a slightly different shade of blue. You have to admire someone who can create 1,000 different shades of blue, don't you? As the Doctor talked, Anji was leading him step by tiny step towards the cell door. They halted in front of the locking mechanism. Even sky blue pink? Anji asked. The Doctor looked quizzical. It's a sort of joke, a thing kids say, a mythical colour because it can't exist. If something's pink, it can't be sky blue. The Doctor smiled. But sometimes the blue sky can be flushed with pink, and it can be quite beautiful. Maybe that's what it means. Not everything's black and white, you know. Although the sky can be black or white, of course. Anji handed him the sonic screwdriver. Or red, or gold, or sky blue pink, said Anji with a smile. Or purple, or green, continued the Doctor. pulling the front panel off the lock. "That's taking it a bit far away from Earth?" Anji asked, eyes fixed on the doctor, but gesturing with her left hand to let the boys know that any Earth is rubbish distractions would not be appreciated at this point. I remember a place where the night sky was burnt orange and the tree leaves were silver. Beautiful. I would lie on the hillside gazing at the stars and putting the world to rights." The sonic screwdriver was making buzzing noises as the doctor began to pull wires out of the lock. "What world, Doctor? Is this your home planet? Tell me about it." There was a loud click and a buzz from the door. "What world?" The doctor paused, and then, to Anji's horror, he shot her a look which froze her stomach. His eyes suddenly seemed dead. "I don't know," he said. "I don't know." "Way to distract the guy," called Beezy. Anji wanted to hit him. "I'm sorry, Doctor," she said softly. The look vanished as quickly as it had appeared. No, he said, smiling at her. "Nothing to be sorry about." And to Anji's extreme surprise, he gave her a big hug. The sonic screwdriver hit her in the small of her back, and she gave a grunt. The doctor let her go, and looked at the screwdriver in some surprise. "You're right, Beezy," he said. "That was a way to distract me. Well done, Anji." But then he looked at the still closed door, and back at the sonic screwdriver, and up at the door again. "Oh dear," he said. "I think I need to be distracted a bit more." After that look, Anji wasn't sure she wanted to give it another go. Of course, she didn't want to stay in this cell forever either, but the doctor, he was supposed to be the good guy. She'd never dreamed that someone like that could suddenly become so terrifying. And suddenly his face changed again. "I hate being locked up," he cried, thumping the door. And it slid open. The doctor's face split in the widest grin Anji had ever seen. He punched the air and gave a silent "yes" to the world. The boys were less quiet, whooping and calling, until Anji hurriedly shushed them, fearing guards. "Well done, Doctor," she whispered. "I knew you could do it." "I'm glad you did," he whispered back, looking her straight in the eye. "I'm glad you did." Anji put her blazer back on, picked up her bag, and reluctantly squeezed her sore feet back into her shoes. It was like she was popping out after work, not like she was about to venture into killer robot territory on an alien planet. She felt she should be reacting more, but just at the moment, she couldn't. They left the cell, the doctor almost pantomime with his "let's creep out quietly" gestures, and whispered suggestions. Anji thought she could remember the way she had been brought to the cell and could navigate them back. The boys thought they could find their way out of the palace from there. Then there was only the question of whether they could steal, borrow, Anji's naturally lawful mind substituted, a vehicle, or whether they'd have to walk all the way to the complex. She really, really hoped they'd find a car. Then they were going to try to find more or less the same spot where Anji and the doctor had come out, so they could retrace the route and have a good starting point for locating Fitz. Anji tried to think of some positive things to say about Fitz to motivate them in their task, but unfortunately nothing came to mind. The doctor claimed to have an unerring sense of direction, and was convinced he could find the 3 princesses without actually knowing where they were to start with. "It'll be easy to distinguish the living quarters from the more functional areas like this," he said. "And if no one's allowed to see these girls, there'll probably be only one set of guards to get through, and then I'm home free." His face crumpled slightly as he said that. Anji wasn't sure why. "And," the doctor continued, recovering rapidly, if indeed she hadn't imagined it to start with, "I can usually bluff my way anywhere." She hoped he could. Anji shot him a secret, pleading, "Don't abandon me, look," and he grinned back at her encouragingly. "It's all going to be fine," he said, taking in all 4 of them. Then a special, direct look at Anji. "Don't worry. Oh, and—" he dived into one of his pockets. "This might come in handy." He pulled out his hand, and presented Anji with a full roll of elastoplast. She could have kissed him. And with that, he flew off down the corridor, leaving Anji and the Anji boys to creep out alone.